The message came on a cold Tuesday morning. It traveled through space for 3 days before reaching the relay station near Neptune. From there, it took only seconds to reach Earth. Ambassador Carolyn Webb was drinking her morning coffee when her tablet buzzed. She looked at the screen and nearly dropped her cup. The message was not from any human government. It was not from any corporation or military base. It was from the Galactic Council. For 60 years, humanity had been sending messages into space. They sent greetings in hundreds of languages. They sent music, art, and mathematics. They sent signals saying, "We are here. We want to be friends." And for 60 years, they received nothing but silence. Now, finally, someone had answered. Carolyn read the message 3 times to make sure she understood it correctly. The Galactic Council, a government representing over 400 alien species, was inviting humanity to appear before them. They wanted to meet the humans face to face, but something about the message felt wrong. The words were polite, but there was coldness behind them. They called it a hearing instead of a welcome ceremony. They gave humanity only 3 days to arrive, barely enough time to make the journey. Caroline was 53 years old. She had gray streaks in her dark hair and lines around her eyes from years of difficult work. She had spent her whole career as a diplomat, solving problems between countries that hated each other. She had talked to dictators and terrorists. She had prevented wars. But she had never faced anything like this. She called her assistant, a young man named Daniel Price. He was smart and eager, with curly brown hair and glasses that he was always pushing up his nose. "Have you seen the message?" she asked him. Daniel nodded, his face pale. "The whole world has seen it. The news channels are going crazy. People are dancing in the streets. They think this is the greatest moment in human history. And what do you think?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. "I think they're not inviting us to a party. I think they're summoning us to explain ourselves." Caroline smiled. She had chosen her assistant well. She spent the next hour making calls. She spoke with presidents and prime ministers. She spoke with generals and scientists. Everyone agreed that humanity had to respond to this invitation. The question was who should go and what they should say. In the end, Caroline chose a small team. She picked Dr. Nathan Brooks, a man who had spent 20 years studying alien languages. He was thin and nervous, with a habit of talking too fast when he got excited. But he knew more about alien communication than anyone on Earth. She picked Commander Lisa Tate, a military officer with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. Lisa did not smile often, but when she did, it meant she had figured something out that everyone else had missed. And she picked Marcus Young, an economist who understood how money and power worked across different cultures. He was a large man with a gentle voice, the kind of person who could explain complicated things in simple words. They met at the spaceport in Geneva, where their ship was waiting. It was called the Endeavour, a sleek vessel designed for long diplomatic missions. It had comfortable quarters, advanced communication systems, and no weapons at all. Carolyn wanted to send a message of peace. Admiral Gregory Cole came to see them off. He was a big man with a weathered face and hands that had worked hard all his life. He had commanded Earth's defense fleet for 15 years, and he was worried. "I don't like this," he told Caroline as they walked toward the ship. "We've been asking to talk to them for 60 years. They ignore us completely. Then, right after we test our new faster engines, suddenly they want to meet? That's not a coincidence. You think they're scared of us?" Carolyn asked. Gregory shook his head. "I think they're trying to decide if they should be. And I think whatever they decide will determine whether humanity has a future among the stars." He handed her a small device. "This is a direct link to my fleet. If things go wrong, if you need help, press this button. I can't promise we'll arrive in time, but I can promise we'll come." Caroline took the device and put it in her pocket. She hoped she would never have to use it. The journey to the Citadel station took 2.5 days at maximum speed. During that time, Nathan briefed the team on everything he knew about the Galactic Council. "They've been around for a very long time," he explained, pulling up images on the ship's display screens. "The oldest member species have been traveling through space for over 100,000 years. They've developed a ranking system based on age and achievement. The older and more advanced you are, the more power you have." "And where do we rank?" Lisa asked. Nathan looked uncomfortable. "At the very bottom. Actually, below the bottom. Their youngest member has been part of the council for 6,000 years. To them, we're not even children. We're babies." Marcus leaned forward. "So why invite us at all? If we're so far beneath them, why bother?" "That's what worries me," Nathan said. "I've been studying their communications for years. When they talk about young species, they use words like guidance and protection. But when they talk about us specifically, they use different words. Words that translate more like problem and threat and containment." The team sat in silence, absorbing this information. Caroline stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, stars streaked past like lines of light. Somewhere ahead, 400 alien civilizations were waiting to judge humanity. They had already decided that humans were dangerous. They had already decided that humans could not be trusted. In 3 days, Caroline would have to change their minds. She would have to convince beings who had been civilized for longer than humans had existed that humanity deserved a chance. She would have to do it without weapons, without leverage, without anything except her words and her belief. In her own species, she thought about Earth. She thought about the billions of people going about their daily lives, unaware of how much depended on what happened next. She thought about her daughter, who was expecting her first child in 2 months. She thought about all the children who would be born into whatever future this meeting created. "We're going to be fine," she said, though she was not sure she believed it. "We're going to walk in there and show them who we really are. And if they don't like what they see, well, that's their problem, not ours." Daniel smiled at her. Nathan went back to his research. Lisa checked her tactical assessments. Marcus studied economic data, and the Endeavor flew on through the darkness, carrying 5 humans toward a meeting that would decide the fate of their entire species. Caroline saw the Citadel station before anyone else on the ship. She had been unable to sleep and had come to the observation deck to watch the stars. Then, slowly, something began to block out those stars. Something enormous. At first, she thought it was a moon. Then she thought it was a planet. But as the Endeavor drew closer, she realized it was neither. It was a structure built by living beings, hanging in the empty space between galaxies. The Citadel was bigger than anything humans had ever created. It was bigger than anything humans had ever imagined. Cities floated inside it like toys in a bathtub. Oceans of water and other stranger liquids filled vast chambers. Small artificial suns burned at its center, providing light and warmth to millions of different environments. Daniel came up behind her and stopped, his mouth falling open. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Apparently not," Caroline replied. Nathan joined them a moment later, followed by Lisa and Marcus. For a long time, nobody spoke. They just stared at this thing that proved, beyond any doubt, how small humanity really was in the grand scheme of the universe. "They built this," Marcus said finally. "They built this, and we're proud of our little colonies on Mars and Europa. We're like ants who just discovered fire, trying to impress people who created the sun." Lisa shook her head. "Ants with nuclear weapons. That's why they're worried about us." The Endeavor received docking instructions from the Citadel's traffic control. The voice that spoke to them was neither male nor female, neither warm nor cold. It simply gave directions and expected them to be followed. They landed in a docking bay that could have held 1,000 ships like theirs. As the doors opened and they stepped out onto the alien station, Caroline felt her heart beating fast. This was it. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for since they first looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone else was out there. A creature was waiting for them. It stood on 4 legs that bent in strange directions. Its body supported 6 arms of different sizes. Its head was mostly taken up by a single large eye that changed colors as it looked at them. "I am Coordinator Vexus," it said. A device on its chest translated its words into English. "I will be your guide during your stay on the Citadel." Caroline stepped forward with her best diplomatic smile. "Thank you for receiving us. We are honored to finally meet our neighbors in this galaxy." Vexus's eye turned a deep shade of purple. "You are here to answer questions, not to make friends. The Council has serious concerns about your species. Very serious concerns. Follow me." It turned and walked away without waiting to see if they would follow. Caroline exchanged glances with her team. Then, they all hurried after the alien guide. The corridors of the Citadel seemed to go on forever. They passed windows that looked out on environments from hundreds of different worlds. Caroline saw forests made of crystal that chimed in artificial breezes. She saw oceans of liquid metal with creatures swimming through them. She saw fields of something that looked like living fire, with beings dancing through the flames without being burned, and everywhere they went, aliens stopped to stare at them. There were creatures of all shapes and sizes. Some looked almost human. Others looked like nothing Caroline had ever seen, even in her wildest dreams. Some floated through the air. Some crawled on the walls. Some seemed to exist in more dimensions than 3. Most of them did not look happy to see the humans. "They're watching us like we're dangerous animals," Daniel whispered. "To them, we probably are," Nathan replied. "Remember, they've been monitoring us for centuries. They've seen our wars, our weapons, our worst moments. To them, we're the scary monsters from a primitive world." They walked for what felt like hours before Vexus finally stopped in front of a simple door. "These are your quarters," it said. "You will stay here until you are called before the Council. Food and water will be provided. Do not leave this area without permission." The rooms inside were plain and functional. 4 small bedrooms connected to a central living space. The furniture was basic. The walls were bare. It was a prison cell with better lighting. That night, the team gathered to plan their approach. Nathan had been monitoring local communications, trying to learn as much as he could about what awaited them. "It's worse than I thought," he said, his face grim. "They're not planning to welcome us. They're planning to put us on trial. Species from all over the Council have been speaking against humanity for weeks. They've compiled a complete record of human history, focusing on every war, every atrocity, every act of cruelty we've ever committed. Can they do that?" Daniel asked. "Can they just judge us based on our past?" "They can do whatever they want," Lisa said. "They have all the power. We have none. That's the reality we're dealing with." Marcus was looking at economic data on his tablet. It's not just about morality. Several major species have been arguing that humans should be contained in our home system. They want to put up barriers, cut us off from the rest of the galaxy until we prove we've matured enough to be trusted. Some are even suggesting we should be quarantined permanently. Caroline listened to all of this without speaking. She walked to the window and looked out at the artificial sky of the Citadel. Somewhere beyond these walls, hundreds of alien representatives were preparing to decide humanity's fate. And from what her team was telling her, they had already made up their minds. "They're afraid of us," she said finally. The others looked at her. "Think about it. They're ancient. They're powerful beyond imagination. They control technology that makes our best science look like children's toys. And yet they're afraid of a species that just learned to fly less than 200 years ago. Why? Nathan considered this. Because we're unpredictable. We don't follow their patterns. We grew too fast, achieved too much. They don't understand us, and what they don't understand, they fear. Exactly. Carolyn turned to face her team. We can't compete with them on power. We can't impress them with our technology. We can't threaten them into accepting us. The only thing we can do is help them understand us. Really understand us. Not just the bad parts, but all of it. The good and the bad together. And if they still reject us? Lisa asked. Caroline was quiet for a moment. Then, at least we'll know we tried. At least we'll know we showed them who we really are, and they chose to turn away. But I don't think that will happen. I think somewhere, deep down, they want to believe in us. They want to believe that young species can grow and change and become something better. We just have to remind them of that hope. She looked at each of her team members in turn. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we face the council. And whatever happens, we face it together. One by one, they went to their rooms. But Caroline stayed at the window for a long time, watching the lights of the citadel flicker in the artificial night, thinking about what she would say when she finally had the chance to speak for all of humanity. The Great Assembly Chamber was designed to make visitors feel small. It worked. Caroline and her team stood on a platform in the center of a massive room that rose up around them like the inside of a bowl. Thousands of seats climbed toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Every seat was filled with an alien representative, and every alien was looking down at the 5 humans below. A single bright light shone on the platform, making Caroline feel like a bug under a magnifying glass. She could see the aliens watching her, but she could not see their expressions clearly. She did not know if they were curious or hostile or bored. She only knew that they were judging her. The High Arbiter floated at the highest point of the chamber. It was not quite solid, not quite liquid. Its body was made of flowing silver energy contained within a shell of crystal. When it spoke, its voice filled the entire room without needing any amplification. We have gathered to address the matter of the human species, the High Arbiter announced. They have expanded beyond their home system without permission. They have developed weapons of great destruction. They have refused to follow the rules of this council. Today, they will answer for these actions. Caroline felt Lisa tense beside her. This was not a hearing. This was a trial, and they had already been found guilty. The first speaker against them was a tall creature that looked something like a giant praying mantis. Its body was green and covered in hard plates. Its eyes were black and showed no emotion. When it moved with the careful grace of a predator. I am Ambassador Crix, it said, its voice clicking and buzzing through the translator. I speak for the Mantori Collective. Let us examine the facts about these humans. A massive holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing images and videos from Earth's history. In just the last 100 years, Crix continued, humans have created weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. They have done this not once, but many times, each generation building bigger and more terrible bombs. They are a species that loves destruction. The images showed mushroom clouds rising over cities. They showed missiles launching from submarines. They showed soldiers and tanks and warships. They claim to have achieved peace, Crix said, but their peace is built on a threat of total annihilation. They do not wage war because they fear their own weapons, not because they have learned to be civilized. Remove those weapons, and they would return to killing each other immediately. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Carolyn forced herself to remain calm. The next speaker was stranger still. It was a being made entirely of sound, visible only as vibrations in the air, that formed a vaguely humanoid shape. "We have studied human communications," this creature said. "Their entertainment celebrates violence. Their heroes are warriors and killers. Their children play games where they pretend to murder each other. Even their language is filled with war. They speak of winning arguments as if words were weapons. They talk about conquering fears as if emotions were enemies. They describe fighting diseases as if sickness were an invading army. Violence is woven into their very thoughts." More speakers followed. Hour after hour, they stood before the assembly and listed humanity's failures. A poor creature like a floating jellyfish spoke about human pollution. They poisoned their own oceans. They filled their own air with toxic gases. They destroyed their own forests. They killed millions of other species that shared their world. They treated their planet like something to be used up and thrown away. A being made of living rock spoke about human inequality. They allow some of their kind to starve while others have more than they could ever need. They divide themselves by the color of their skin, by the place they were born, by which gods they worship. They have never learned to see each other as one people. A creature that seemed to exist partly in another dimension spoke about human unpredictability. "We cannot model their behavior. We cannot predict what they will do. Other young species follow patterns we understand. They grow gradually, learning from their mistakes. Humans lurch forward in sudden bursts, making discoveries they are not ready for, building technologies they cannot control. They are chaos given form." Through all of this, Carolyn listened. She did not interrupt. She did not object. She simply stood on that platform, under that harsh light, and heard 400 civilizations tell her everything that was wrong with her species. Daniel looked like he wanted to scream. Lisa's hands were clenched into fists. Marcus was pale with anger. Nathan was scribbling notes, trying to keep track of all the accusations. But Caroline remained still. She was waiting. Finally, after what felt like days, the High Arbiter spoke again. "The accusations have been presented. The human delegation may now respond." This was the moment. Everything Caroline had ever learned, every skill she had ever developed, every word she had ever spoken in negotiation came down to this. She walked slowly to the center of the platform, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. She looked up at the thousands of faces watching her. Some looked triumphant, certain that humanity had been exposed. Others looked curious, wondering what this tiny creature could possibly say in defense of her violent species. A few looked almost sympathetic, as if they felt sorry for her. Carolyn took a deep breath and began to speak. "Everything you have said about us is true." The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. The entire chamber seemed frozen in shock. "We have built weapons that could destroy our world," Caroline continued. "We have fought wars that killed millions of our own kind. We have poisoned our planet and mistreated each other and failed to live up to our own ideals again and again. You have studied our history, and you have found darkness. You are not wrong." She paused, letting her words settle into the stunned silence. "But you are not complete." She straightened her shoulders and looked directly at the High Arbiter. "You have told only half of our story. Now, with your permission, I would like to tell the other half. I would like to show you what humanity really is, not just the darkness, but the light as well. And then, if you still wish to condemn us, at least you will do so with full knowledge of what you are condemning." The High Arbiter's crystal form pulsed with light. After a long moment, it spoke. "Continue, human. Tell us your story." Carolyn smiled. It was not a smile of happiness or confidence. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for this moment her entire life. "Let me tell you about my people," she said. "Let me tell you about humanity." Caroline looked up at the thousands of alien faces watching her. She could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on her shoulders. But she did not let it crush her. Instead, she began to speak. You talk about our weapons as if they define us. You show images of our bombs and missiles and say this proves we are violent. But you leave out the most important part of that story. She walked slowly across the platform, making eye contact with as many delegates as she could. We built those weapons during a time of great fear. Two groups of humans, with different ideas about how society should work, faced each other across the world. Each side believed the other would destroy them if given the chance. So they built bombs. Terrible bombs. Bombs that could end everything. She stopped and turned to face the assembly directly. And then they did not use them. The words hung in the air. For decades, we possessed the power to destroy ourselves completely. Every day, soldiers sat in bunkers with their fingers near buttons that could launch the end of the world. And every day, they chose not to press those buttons. Not because they were forced. Not because they were unable. But because they knew, in their hearts, that there had to be a better way. She gestured toward the holographic display that still showed images of human weapons. You see those missiles as proof of our violence. I see them as proof of our restraint. Any species can build a weapon. But how many species can build a weapon capable of ending their civilization and then choose, again and again, not to use it? That choice, that constant choice for life over death, is what makes us human. Ambassador Crick shifted in its seat, its black eyes unreadable. You condemn our competitive nature, Caroline continued. You say we fight each other for resources and power. And yes, we do. But that same competition has driven us to achieve things that should have been impossible. She pulled out a small device and pressed a button. New images appeared on the holographic display, replacing the weapons with something else entirely. This is my species, 200 years ago. We traveled on horses. We lit our homes with candles. We died of diseases that are now easily cured. The average human lived for perhaps 40 years. The images shifted, showing the progression of human technology. In less than 2 centuries, we went from riding horses to walking on our moon. We went from sending letters that took weeks to arrive to communicating instantly across the entire planet. We went from dying of infections to mapping our own genetic code and editing it. We did all of this not in spite of our competitive nature, but because of it. She turned to face the High Arbiter directly. You have been traveling through space for 100,000 years, and you have built amazing things. This citadel proves that. But we have been traveling through space for only 60 years, and we have already colonized 3 worlds beyond our home. Give us 1,000 years. Give us 10,000. Can any of you honestly say what we might become? A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. Carolyn noticed it and pressed forward. You fear us because we are unpredictable. You cannot put us in your models or fit us into your categories. We grow too fast, change too quickly, refuse to follow the paths you expect. To you, we are chaos. She smiled then, a real smile that lit up her tired face. But chaos is not always destruction. Sometimes chaos is creation. Sometimes chaos is change. And the universe, honored representatives, does not stand still. It changes constantly. Species that cannot adapt to change will eventually disappear. Perhaps that is something you have forgotten during your long ages of peace. The being of living sound spoke up from its place in the assembly. Pretty words, human. But words do not change the facts of your history. Caroline nodded. You are right. Our history contains terrible things. Wars that killed millions. Cruelty that defies understanding. Failures of compassion that shame us still. I do not deny any of this. She paused and let her voice soften. But our history also contains something else. It contains doctors who devoted their lives to curing diseases. It contains teachers who spent years helping children learn. It contains ordinary people who risked everything to help strangers they would never meet. She pointed to Nathan, standing behind her on the platform. This man has spent 20 years trying to understand your languages, your cultures, your ways of thinking. Not to exploit them, not to find weaknesses, simply because he believes that understanding each other is the first step toward peace. She pointed to Marcus. This man has worked his entire career to find ways for different peoples to trade fairly, to share resources without conflict, to build prosperity together. She pointed to Lisa. This woman has served in our military for 15 years. She has trained for war her whole adult life, and she has never killed anyone, because our military exists not to conquer, but to protect, to keep the peace that our grandparents worked so hard to build. She pointed to Daniel. And this young man left his family and his home to come here, knowing he might never return, because he believed that meeting you was worth any risk. That is the human spirit. We reach out even when we are afraid. We hope even when hope seems foolish. Caroline walked back to the center of the platform. You can contain us if you wish. You can build walls around our solar system and keep us trapped there until you decide we have matured enough. Some of your members have suggested this. Her voice grew harder, but I would ask you to think about what that says about you. A council of 400 ancient civilizations with technology that seems like magic to us, and you are so afraid of a species that discovered electricity 200 years ago that you want to lock them in a cage. Is that the wisdom you have gained from your 100,000 years of progress? Is that the best you can do? She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes where she could find them. We are young. We are rough. We have made terrible mistakes and will probably make more. But we are also brave and curious and determined to do better. We learn from our failures. We grow from our pain. And we never ever give up. She spread her arms wide, as if embracing the entire assembly. You can judge us for what we have been, or you can give us a chance to show you what we might become. That choice is yours. But make it with open eyes, honored representatives. Make it knowing not just the worst of humanity, but the best as well. She lowered her arms and stood straight, her voice quiet but clear. We are not asking you to trust us. Trust must be earned. We are asking only for the opportunity to earn it. Give us that chance, and we will not disappoint you. That is my promise, not just as an ambassador, but as a human being. The chamber was silent. Caroline walked back to stand with her team. She had said everything she could say. Now, the decision belonged to the council. The chamber exploded into noise after Caroline finished speaking. Aliens argued with each other in hundreds of different languages. Translators struggled to keep up with the overlapping conversations. The High Arbiter called for order again and again, its voice booming through the chamber. But it took a long time before silence returned. The human delegation will withdraw while the council deliberates, the High Arbiter announced. You will be called when a decision has been reached. Coordinator Vexus appeared at the edge of the platform, its single eye now a calm blue color. Follow me, it said, and led them back through the endless corridors to their quarters. The waiting was the hardest part. Caroline sat in the common room, staring at the wall. She had done everything she could. She had spoken from her heart. She had told the truth about humanity, both the good and the bad. Now there was nothing to do but wait and see if it was enough. Daniel paced back and forth, too anxious to sit still. How long do you think they'll take? There's no way to know, Nathan said. He was hunched over his tablet, trying to find any information about what was happening in the chamber. Decisions like this have taken anywhere from hours to years in the past. Years? Lisa shook her head. We can't wait years. We might not have a choice, Marcus replied. He was sitting in a corner, running calculations on his tablet. If they decide to contain us, it could take decades before they review that decision. Our grandchildren might be old before humanity gets another chance like this. Caroline listened to her team, but did not respond. She was thinking about Earth. She was thinking about all the people going about their normal lives, unaware that their future was being decided in a chamber hundreds of light years away. She was thinking about her daughter, who was about to become a mother herself. She pulled out the device Admiral Gregory had given her. It was small and simple, just a button that would send a signal to Earth's fleet. She turned it over in her hands, feeling its weight. "Would you actually use that?" Daniel asked, noticing what she was holding. Caroline considered the question. "If they tried to hurt us?" "Yes. If they decided to imprison humanity forever?" "I don't know. Starting a war we couldn't win wouldn't help anyone." "At least we'd go down fighting," Lisa said. "We're not going down at all," Caroline replied firmly. "Not today. I refuse to believe that 400 civilizations looked at everything humanity has to offer and decided we're not worth the trouble. That's not how the universe works." Hours passed. The team tried to rest, but none of them could really sleep. They ate food from the synthesizers without tasting it. They talked about home and family and what they would do when they get back to Earth. They did not talk about what would happen if they never got back. Finally, after what felt like forever, Vexus appeared at their door. "The council has reached a decision," it said. "Follow me." They walked back through those long corridors one more time. Caroline felt her heart beating faster with each step. She tried to read Vexus's body language to get some hint of what awaited them, but the alien's single eye remained an unreadable blue. The great assembly chamber was even more crowded than before. Every seat was filled. Aliens stood in the aisles and floated near the ceiling. It seemed like every being on the Citadel wanted to witness this moment. Caroline and her team took their place on the central platform. The harsh spotlight fell on them once again. Above them, the High Arbiter's crystal form glowed with inner light. "The Council has voted on the matter of the human species," the High Arbiter announced. Its voice echoed through the silent chamber. It was not an easy decision. Many strong opinions were expressed on all sides. Caroline held her breath. By our traditional measures, humanity does not qualify for membership in this council. You are young. Your history is troubled. Your future is uncertain. Many of our members believe you pose a danger to yourselves and others. Caroline felt her heart sink. However, the word hung in the air like a held breath. Ambassador Webb has reminded us of something important. We have grown comfortable in our age. We have grown certain of our wisdom. We judge other species by rules that we created, and we forget that there might be other paths to the stars. The High Arbiter's form shifted, becoming brighter. Humanity is different from us. That difference frightens many of our members. But difference is not always bad. Sometimes different perspectives show us things we have missed. Sometimes new voices wake us from old dreams. It turned to face the full assembly. The council has voted. By a count of 231 in favor, 181 against, and 17 choosing not to vote. Humanity is granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. Caroline's team erupted in quiet celebration behind her. Daniel actually jumped in the air. Nathan's face split into a huge grin. Lisa nodded slowly, her eyes bright. Marcus let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for hours, but Caroline remained focused on the High Arbiter. There will be conditions, it continued. Restrictions on certain technologies. Oversight of your expansion into space. Regular reviews of your progress. You will be watched closely, humans. Very closely. We understand, Caroline said. We accept these conditions. There is one more thing. The High Arbiter gestured toward the assembly. Ambassador Crix wishes to speak. Carolyn felt her stomach tighten. Crix had been their harshest critic. What more could it want to say? The mantis-like creature rose from its seat and moved to a speaking platform, its black eyes fixed on Caroline. I have opposed humanity's membership from the beginning, Crix said. My concerns have not changed. I believe you are dangerous. I believe you will cause problems. I believe many in this council will regret this decision. It paused, and something in its posture shifted. But I have realized something today. I was not afraid of what humans might do to us. I was afraid of what they might show us about ourselves. Your passion, your drive, your refusal to accept limits. These things challenge us. They force us to ask if our long peace has made us weak. Crix made a clicking sound that the translator rendered as a sigh. I will be watching you, humans. Not to catch you failing, but to see what you achieve. I think you will surprise us. I think you will surprise yourselves. It was not an apology. It was not quite approval, but it was enough that the ceremony continued for a while longer. There were formal words to be spoken, documents to be signed, rituals to be observed. But Caroline barely noticed any of it. She was thinking about what came next. When they finally returned to the Endeavor, she stood at the viewport and watched the citadel shrink behind them. Somewhere inside that massive structure, 400 civilizations were beginning to accept that the universe had changed. A new voice had joined the conversation. A new species had claimed its place among the stars. Daniel joined her at the window. We did it, he said softly. We actually did it. Caroline nodded. We got our foot in the door. Now comes the hard part. Now we have to prove we deserve to be there. She thought about the years ahead, the challenges humanity would face, the mistakes they would surely make, the growth that would be required of them. But we'll manage, she said. We always do. The Endeavor jumped to faster than light speed, carrying 5 humans home with news that would change everything. Behind them, the Citadel continued its eternal orbit, home to an ancient council that had just made room for something new. Humanity had arrived, and the universe would never be the same.